outside the 10. Carr tips it in and it's Waller. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offense taking over the fight. Mama, there goes that man.
They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Big Easy edition of the Waterboy Experience. There isn't much NFL this week, but there was a Formula One race, so I'm going to sit back and take it easy this week while my hardworking common man here takes over. So please welcome the American dream, the common man, Jason Shaddix. Jason, how are you?
Well, I'm pretty damn tired. We're recording at a different time than usual.
At midnight, to be exact.
Yes, at midnight and virtually. So audio levels may be a little bit wonky. Audio sync may be a little bit wonky. And Davis, well, he's always wonky.
But you know what? I don't care, because this is, like I said, this is the easy episode. All I have to do is just sit back and listen to you ramble about gearhead things.
And boy, do I have things to ramble about.
Well, we will get to that. At first, I wanted to play a few little games regarding the NFL. First, I think I wanted to talk about who do we think are going to be the big winners this season. Then we're going to talk about who we think are going to be the big losers. And then finally, we're going to play a game called Hot Seat. We're going to talk about who around the league this year has to be at their very best to keep their spot or their position on their respective teams. So,
Oh, you know who I'm going after.
I know who you're going after, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but are you ready?
I am born ready. No, I'm not, but let's do it.
All right, well, that's all that matters. So, my big winner this year, my big prediction winner this year, I could go for the Raiders, but that would be a little bit biased. So I'm going to not sleep on the Raiders right now, but I'm just going to kind of lay them down over there. And I think the biggest winners that we'll be talking about coming out of this NFL season are the Buffalo Bills. You're looking at a team that might be just as balanced, if not more, than the previous year's Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams. You've got Josh Allen, Von Miller, Stephon Diggs. This is a loaded team, and they are a big, big threat, and we could be looking at them in the Super Bowl. In fact, this first game of the season is the Bills versus the Rams, and, you know, you've mentioned that you really think that that's going to be a Super Bowl preview for what's to come. So, what do you think? Who's your big winner? Who's your predicted big winner of this year?
Well, I would have to go with the same team as you, the Buffalo Bills. They have been a great team. They were a great team last year, and we thought that they had a chance of going to the Super Bowl until, let's be honest, they got screwed at the overtime with the coin toss against the, was it the Chiefs?
Yes, it was the Kansas City Chiefs.
There you go, the Chiefs. So, like I said, you know, maybe this will be a preview of the Super Bowl this year, the Los Angeles Rams versus the Buffalo Bills. Either way, it's going to be an interesting game and season for both teams.
Oh, it certainly will. And I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, and I mentioned last week, they didn't really improve this year. They didn't take time to go out and get big weapons and big-name players. And the Kansas City Chiefs have really been the team to plague and haunt the Buffalo Bills every time they've gotten into the playoffs for the past few years. So I'm not saying Buffalo doesn't need to worry about Kansas City, but I'm saying that they're less of a threat than they were before, because on paper, looking at the roster, the Buffalo Bills are a better team than the Kansas City Chiefs are right now. So I think this is the year that they'll finally get their win in the playoffs against the Chiefs, and we'll see them go on to the Super Bowl. Now, winning the Super Bowl is another thing, because, you know, that's another challenge entirely, but, you know, we'll see what happens. But I'm looking for a lot of improvement from the Buffalo Bills, and especially Josh Allen at quarterback. I think he's got a potential MVP season lined up here.
If we're going to be perfectly honest, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs have been building their team ever since they lost to Tom Brady.
I think it's possible to say that.
I mean, think about it. They let their best, one of their best players out there, Tyreek Hill, walk away. I think that shows that they're not building towards being better. I think they believe that they're at a good point where they're like, well, we're good enough.
We're good enough. We're always going to be a threat. And, and that they always will be a threat. But the teams around you are getting bigger. They're getting better. They're spending more money on players. The Raiders are about to have one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league and the highest paid tight end. We're not scared to spend money on these big name players. And so all around you in the AFC, all of this money's being spent, and what are you doing? You just keep giving Patrick Mahomes raises. And you don't really need that. You need to give Patrick Mahomes weapons around him. And Juju Smith-Schuster does not count, and I've mentioned that before. But they've stayed the same. Well, if anything, they've gotten worse, but there's no real effort to improve the team itself. So that's why they're my pick to be the biggest losers this year. I'm not saying they're going to be the worst team in the league, and this isn't just coming from me because, I hate Patrick Mahomes and I hate the Chiefs. I really do.
With a burning passion.
I really do look at them, and I think that they are the most unimproved team in football. And I wanted to give an honorable mention for the biggest loser, the Cleveland Browns. They have had a hell of an offseason. We're not going to get into the details because we've explained it a million times. But, this is not looking to be a good year for them in any way. And I'm hoping they can bounce back, but, doesn't look bright, the future for them.
No, it doesn't. And honestly, to me, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be the worst team, not in performance, but, like what you were talking about, because there's a lot of bad teams in the NFL. I mean, of course, some of them, their expectations isn't as high as the Chiefs, but I think the ones that are going to be the biggest letdown, and I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, it's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, and I'll tell you why. Derek Carr has a long track record of choking when he needs to not be choking. He needs to be consistent, and that's his biggest downfall.
He needs to swallow, not choke.
Exactly, and you know better than anybody else about that. But he really needs to prove that he's worth all the time and the effort that Mark Davis has spent on him, that all the coaches had spent on him. And for me personally, if I was in charge of the Raiders, he would have been gone a long time ago because I don't see that he's worth it. And like I said, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope with Devontae Adams being there now, he would have a chance at proving everybody wrong and showing that, even though we don't get to the Super Bowl this year, we make it to the playoffs and we actually get to the second round of the playoffs instead of getting out during the first round. We want to prove everybody that, we won't have a losing streak this time around. And I hope that's the case, but based on history itself, the Raiders will not be consistent and the Raiders will fall, and they're going to be the biggest letdown because they've spent a lot of money on getting really good players, and it might just be a bust for them.
In a way, I agree with you, but at the same time, I disagree with you. Whether it's out of, favoritism or loyalty, or if it's me, I'm very optimistic about the season for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm also very skeptical. As usual, I'm not the kind of guy to go in and be like, this is going to be our year. We're going to do it this year. No, I go into every year expecting disappointment.
And last year, did they fail to disappoint you?
Well, at first we started out and I wasn't disappointed. I was like, okay, maybe we're going to get somewhere. And then the disappointment happened. And then then it
kept coming.
And then it kept coming. And then it kept coming. And then all of a sudden it went back up. And so the Raiders are a team that they play with your emotions. They'll get you up. They'll get you they're one of the best teams. They'll get you excited and they'll have some of the best games. You know, you watched a couple of them last year, really, really entertaining and exciting games, like against the Ravens, like we had against both games against the Chargers. Yes. I mean, and the Dallas Cowboys. You know, these are like fun, explosive, entertaining games that we won, and they get you excited to be a Raider fan. But for whatever reason, at the same time, we can also turn around the next week and lose 35-0 to the New York Giants or the Detroit Lions or something like that. So it's really hard to get a hold of how good we are and how good we're going to be, because at this point, I have zero expectations going in. I don't have any bad expectations. I don't have any good expectations. I always have the mentality of, we'll see what happens. As long as it's better than the previous year, I'll take it. So, I mean, that's my thought.
I think the Raiders are like an abusive relationship. Like you said, you got your ups and you got your downs. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's really bad.
Sometimes they're on their meds, sometimes they're off their meds. You know, you never know.
But who do you think is going to be the player that has to, like I said, Derek Carr has to prove this year that he's worth it? Who is your player that you think has to prove their worth? That this is the make it or break it year for them?
Well, you already mentioned Derek Carr. I definitely think this is a make it or break it year. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be his last year, so the seat is not nearly as hot for him, because this is definitely, even if if he's just absolutely garbage, this is not going to be his last year as a Raider, because they're still going to give him until probably the rest of his contract. They're not going to buy him out of his contract and fire him. So I think with Derek Carr, the seat is getting warmer, but I don't think it's completely scalding hot right now. Now, one player that I definitely wanted to say is on the hot seat, and I couldn't even, honestly, I don't even have to narrow this down to one player. I could look at the overall team and think the same thing. When I look at the Dallas Cowboys, I'm looking at Dak Prescott, I'm looking at Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm looking at the owner, Jerry Jones. Dak Prescott is a great athlete. I think he's even a good quarterback. Is he the answer for the Dallas Cowboys at this point? I don't think so, because a lot of people have compared him, like you brought up Derek Carr earlier, a lot of people have compared him to Derek Carr. He's very, very similar. He chokes when you absolutely need him, but he can be really, really good. I think this year, Dak Prescott is on his hot seat, because if we see another bad year from the Cowboys, you really have to start looking at that team that you tried to build a few years ago and thinking, is this really worth finishing? And of course, you have CeeDee Lamb on that team who just got there last year. I think he's a great receiver. You have Amari Cooper, great receiver, but you have the receiving talent there, and you really need the quarterback to power it. I don't think Dak Prescott is that guy. I think he gets hurt a little too much, and those injuries kind of stick with him. Now, I mentioned another name. I mentioned the running back, Ezekiel Elliott. He's gotten fat. He's gotten slow. He's gotten diva-ish. This is a guy you don't want on a football team, because he is essentially turning into Eddie Lacy. If you don't know who Eddie Lacy was, he was the running back. He was a star running back for the Green Bay Packers, and it was almost like he stopped caring, and he just gained so much weight, and he looked like an offensive lineman, and he was a running back, and he couldn't meet the weight requirement, and he got cut. And it's a similar situation I'm seeing here with Ezekiel Elliott, who at once I was saying was probably the best running back in the NFL. Now, not so much. So the Dallas Cowboys are in a downward spiral right now. And sure, everybody's like, well, they can get to the playoffs. Sure, they can get to the playoffs. They play in the NFC East. Anybody can get to the playoffs in that division. But once they get there, they lose to teams that also probably shouldn't have even been in the playoffs. So it's 25 years straight. I think that's what it was. It's 25 years straight of the Dallas Cowboys being eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. They have not won a playoff game in 25 years. And I don't think Dak Prescott or Ezekiel Elliott are going to do that. So they are one of my picks to be on the hot seat.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Cowboys, like you said, they're on their last leg. But the thing is, how much of it can you really blame on the players themselves when we know why the team isn't doing as great as it should be? The owner, Jerry Jones, is like Vince McMahon. He's been dragging the Cowboys down for God knows how long, and he won't admit to it. He thinks he's still running a really good team.
Because it's still considered America's team.
It's the most valuable team in, I want to say, in the world. If not, I know it's the most valuable team in the NFL, but it might be number one worldwide.
I believe I saw somewhere that either Vegas or the Rams passed them up a couple years ago for the most valuable franchise. I'm not entirely sure.
As of 2021, Forbes rated the Cowboys as the most valuable team in the world.
They still are?
Yes. The Yankees and the Knicks in New York were second and third on the list, with Barcelona and Real Madrid completing the top 5.
Well, and then in that case, don't you agree that they should start living up to that reputation?
They should be, but can't do anything with the owner. Let's be honest. Anyway, do you want to move on to our betting?
Not just yet. I have one more guy.
All right, give me one more guy. Oh, I actually got one more guy too now that I think about it, but give me your first.
Okay. I was going to mention the New York Giants quarterback, Daniel Jones. He is on the hot seat because he has done virtually nothing at all. Like I can't even go on a really long talk about Daniel Jones because virtually the only thing he's done was trip and fall on his face when he had a wide open 80-yard run, and he literally tripped on his own feet and fell flat on his face on primetime national TV in front of everybody. And it was hilarious. But that's about the only thing that this guy's been famous for. He hasn't produced anything else. And you're looking at a team now, the Giants have Saquon Barkley, but you need more. This offense needs so much more. This is a team that doesn't have an identity right now. This is a team that lacks a lot, and Saquon Barkley could be one of the best running backs in the NFL, but he needs more around him because right now he's the best player that they have, bar none. So I think in the coming year or 2 or 3 or however, they're going to seriously start weighing their options and looking at who they need to keep and who they don't need to keep. And they're going to do a massive overhaul of that offense and defense. And Daniel Jones is one of those guys that I don't see making it out with a job. So let's hope he can prove himself this year, but we'll see. So who was your last guy?
Tom Brady.
Oh, this is a controversial one.
Well, he is the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, he's proven it over and over again. I don't care what other people have to say. They know it. They're just unwilling to admit it. But he is 45 years old. That's pretty much like one of the oldest, if not the oldest, quarterback in NFL history. I think there was one more guy who was a bit older, but still, he is old. And he's still got it. I still think he's got it, but we don't know how long he's got it for. And this year, he retired at the end of last year again, and he came back again. And I think he has to prove that, he's got to prove that he will win this year's Super Bowl. Do I think that Tampa Bay will win the Super Bowl? Not really. But he's got to prove that he's got to do it. And who better than Tom Brady to prove everybody wrong and go out on a high note? But I really do think that Tampa Bay should be looking for a new, young quarterback after this season because he's 45 years old. How long can he realistically play in the NFL and still be good enough?
Every season since about the age of 35 has been a make or break year for Tom Brady because we've gotten to a point now, eventually he has to lose it. He's still got it now, but eventually he has to lose it. When are we going to visually see him lose it? And you mentioned you don't know if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have what it takes to win the Super Bowl. I think they might be a sleeper. I think they could be a team that's really one of the teams that could really impress us. Tom Brady wants to go out on a Super Bowl win. Would he have to settle for at least a Super Bowl loss?
I don't think so. I think Brady is determined to end on a high note. I mean, he could have retired last year, and you know what? People would have said, well, you know what? He won the Super Bowl in 2020. He didn't win it in 2021, but he had a hell of a career. But now that he's back again, he's really got to prove, you know what? You got to prove that you can win your last one and really break records. Make sure nobody can beat your record for a very long time. And you are right that a lot of people were saying, is Tom Brady going to lose it this year or not, since he was 35? But the difference is he was 35. August the 3rd, he turned 45. So tell me realistically, how long does he really have? He's not a 35-year-old man. He's 45.
He keeps surprising us, is the thing. One year
He does.
One year we think, okay, this is the year. He's not going to be nearly as good as he has been. And then he goes out there and he wins a Super Bowl. And then we'll be like, okay, well, he definitely won't have it this year. But he still plays really well. Doesn't necessarily win the Super Bowl, but he still, beats everybody. So I don't know.
Like I said, I think it's a make it or break it year. And this time I think it's for real.
The seat is even hotter than it ever has been for him. And
Exactly.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that.
Yep. All right. Are you now ready for the for our betting?
Yeah. How did you want to do this?
All right. So I'm going to give you a few games, and I want you to tell me if you want to bet on this game or not. And if you want to bet on this game, what team do you choose to win?
I can give you a score.
We can go as far as doing a score, but do you want to count the score? Because I honestly don't think I'm going to be good enough at the scores.
I'll be good at the scores, but
Oh, you bastard!
I'll give you the scores right now, but you don't have to count them.
Okay.
So,
all right,
hit me with them, white boy.
All right, I'll give you week 1. Bills versus Rams.
Bills versus Rams. I think we're going to be looking at a great showing from Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, but I think the Rams are still riding off of that Super Bowl, and they're carrying a lot of momentum going into this year. I think Cooper Kupp's going to have a lot of catches this game. I think Aaron Donald is going to be all over Josh Allen this game. I'm looking for it to be Los Angeles Rams 28, Buffalo Bills 14.
Ooh.
A tough loss to open the season for the Buffalo Bills, but I think they'll get it back later.
All right. I'm actually going to go against you, and I'm going to say that the Bills will win this, and I'll give you a number. It's going to be a little bit unrealistic, I think, but I think it'll be Bills 42, Rams 35.
Interesting.
Yes. I will be definitely off with the score itself, but I do believe that the Bills will win.
You might actually be a little bit closer than me because typically these games are high-scoring games.
Exactly. All right, next game, Eagles versus the Lions.
I am sorry about your Lions, but I'm not expecting them to win this game here. I think.
I agree. But do you want to bet on it?
Do I want to bet on it? I'll bet on it. I'm going to look at the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to beat the Lions here 32-10.
Really? You think we're going to lose that bad, even after everything you've seen from preseason?
I have seen a lot of promising things from preseason. I think this Eagles team is going to be one of the teams that grows a lot this year. And I do think the Lions are going to grow, but the Lions need to get their feet up under them first. I don't think they're quite ready yet. So I'm not looking at them making a big splash here.
All right, fair enough. I, of course, am a little bit biased, so I'm going to go Lions are going to go for the win, and it's going to be 17-15.
Last second field goal situation?
Yes, I think it's going to be a very tight game. I think
Okay.
the Lions will put up a hell of a fight. I won't be sad if they lose or not. Well, once we tell the people what the punishment could be, I would be a little bit sad, but I do believe in the Lions. I think, not to sound too cliche again, but they have the heart of a lion.
Right.
All right, next game. The 49ers versus the Chicago Bears.
See, this one's a tough one, and I'm not going to bet on this one, but Justin Fields is great. Trey Lance is also great. I think Justin Fields is a little bit better than Trey Lance.
Uh-huh.
And I think Justin Fields at quarterback, I don't think the Bills are going to be a force this year. Justin Fields himself will be. So I think the potential winner of this game could be Chicago Bears.
All right. I'm actually going to write it down because if you're wrong and you didn't bet on this game and you actually were right, I'm going to rub it in your face.
I'll be like, well, dang. It's a little too close to call, if you know what I mean.
Yes. All right. But the next game might not be Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mm.
Do you want to tell the people why you were a little bit pissed at the Steelers earlier today?
Well, of course, it was announced this morning that Mitchell Trubisky would be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers and not Kenny Pickett. And like I said last week, it's a smart idea to start Kenny Pickett and let him fail and learn from his failures. But, they're going for Mitchell Trubisky, who is time and time proven himself to not be the guy that people think he is. I am going to bet on this game, however, and I'm going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals going over the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-21.
All right. Honestly, I'm going to take a safe bet with this one, and I'm going to go with the Bengals. Because,
Safe bet.
like I said, their quarterback looks like a young Max Verstappen. All right, next game is the Patriots versus the Miami Dolphins.
This game's a little difficult, but I am going to bet for it. I am going to do the Miami Dolphins. I think Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill will be just too much for that Patriots defense. I think we're going to be looking at a lot of high-flying scoring offense here, and we're talking about a 34-21 win for the Miami Dolphins.
That is quite ambitious, I might say. I think that it's going to be the Patriots because I believe in Bill Belichick. So I believe it's going to be 27-14.
I'm not saying I don't believe in Bill Belichick. I do believe in Bill Belichick, and I believe in Mac Jones. I like the kid. He's got something. But I think that defense, the Patriots defense, has got a little one too many holes in it right now. And I think they'll be exposed. It'll still be a high-scoring game for both teams, but I think they're just a little bit too exposed for a team that now has a Tyreek Hill.
But I think that Tua is going to get hurt again. So
If Tua gets hurt again, then, it's insane.
this
But
is not their year. It's not their year.
not this week, but maybe next week, I think.
Yeah. All right, next game, it's your favorite, the Cleveland Browns versus the Carolina Panthers.
I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers to beat the Cleveland Browns here.
But do you want to bet on it?
I will bet on it. I think Baker Mayfield's going into this game with a vengeance, and he's playing angry here. And this is already, he was going into the foundations of what was a solid Carolina Panthers team, certainly much more solid than the Cleveland Browns here. I think they will suffer their first loss of the season here to the Panthers, and it will be to the tune of, let's say, 28-10.
That's quite a low score.
It's a little bit of a low score, but
I agree with you. I think Baker Mayfield will beat his old team, but I think it's going to be more of a bigger defeat. So I'm going for a nice 45-7.
45-7. That is very ambitious, but not impossible.
He's got a burning hatred for his old team. Plus, come on, look at their quarterbacks for the Browns. They're not exactly the greatest.
And the chemistry on that team itself, the atmosphere in that locker room is not that great.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of distractions.
Yep. All right, next game, the Colts versus the Texans. Personally, I would rather skip this game. I don't know about you.
I'm not going to bet on this game because this is going to be a good game. And it's hard for me to say because Malik Willis, Derrick Henry for the Tennessee Titans, and then you've got Matt Ryan on the Colts. This is going to be a difficult game. So I'm not going to even bet on it. But if I had to pick somebody, I've got the star rookie Malik Willis and his running back King Henry behind him. I've got him going over the Colts, I think.
Next game, the New Orleans Saints versus the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, Jameis Winston is coming back for the New Orleans Saints.
But it's the New Orleans Saints.
It's the New Orleans Saints.
Exactly. And then it's
the thing is, when I look at the Falcons, I'm looking at pieces of a bunch of different teams put together that don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah, that sounds like them.
I feel like Dennis Allen as head coach, if he's just essentially running a Sean Payton offense, and he's running it with Jameis Winston, which is a team that also has Michael Thomas and Chris Olave, and they have Alvin Kamara in the backfield, and they have Taysom Hill. I think the New Orleans Saints are going to win this game, and I'm going to bet on it.
Bet on it.
I am going to bet on it, and I'm going to say it's going to be a 32-14 win. I think you need to give the Falcons some time to find their footing.
I will actually abstain from betting from this one. So if you win this one, you get a free point because I will not bet on this one.
Sweet.
Just because I don't feel like betting on this game. I think it's I think if I choose, I'm gonna be wrong, and I think because you're choosing by yourself, I think you're gonna be wrong. So moving on, we have the Ravens versus the Jets.
I don't think there's any question in my mind. This is going to be the Ravens all the way.
Yeah, let's be honest, it's the Jets. Do we really have to question that? No. Moving on, the Jaguars versus the Commanders.
This is an interesting game. I'm not going to bet on this one.
I agree. I'm not betting on that one.
But if I had to pick one, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have his first big game. That's going to be a good game, and he's going to come out and show off. So
Jags. All right, next one is the Green Bay Packers versus the Vikings.
Green Bay Packers, 32-14.
Are you going to bet on this one?
Yeah, I'll bet on it. 32-14 Packers.
I'll go for the Vikings just to go
just
against
to be different.
That, and because I don't feel like Aaron Rodgers can win without Devontae. So the next game is the Giants versus the Titans.
Giants versus the Titans. Titans already played a game.
No, it's the New York Giants versus the Titans.
Titans?
Yeah.
You said Titans earlier.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
You did.
The lack of sleep is messing with you.
Did you say Texans earlier?
Yeah, Texans.
Oh,
Colts versus Texans.
I thought you said Colts versus Titans.
No, it's Colts versus Texans.
What the heck? Because I made up a whole spiel about Malik Willis and Derrick Henry. I thought you were talking about the Titans. Well, no. Colts are going to win that game.
Too late. You already said the Texans. Moving on. All right, you'll love this one. The Raiders versus the Chargers.
I'm going to bet on this game.
I will too.
38-32 Chargers.
Ooh, so you're going against your own team.
I'm going to have to here.
I can see why, but I'm a little bit optimistic, and I am going to go Raiders 40, Chargers 30.
You think it would be a 2-score game?
Yes, I do believe so. Even though I gave shit to Derek Carr and the Raiders earlier in this episode, in this very long episode, I do believe that the Raiders are going to win this one because it's the Chargers. They know the Chargers are hot at them for kicking them out from entering the playoffs. So both teams will come with a vengeance, but the Raiders are a whole different beast from last year. And I hope I'm not wrong on this one, because if I'm wrong and the Raiders absolutely get defeated, get crushed, and my assumption of Derek Carr is proven right, I'm going to be so fucking pissed.
I'm going to be mad. I hope I'm wrong and you're right. But at the same time, for betting's sake, I hope I'm also right. I don't know.
All right, next game. It is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Arizona Cardinals. I still want to say St. Louis Cardinals, but I know it's not St. Louis.
I'm not going to bet on this game.
Oh, I know why. Moving on to the next game, the Buccaneers versus the Cowboys.
Buccaneers.
Buccaneers, too easy. That's too easy of a game. And then finally, the Broncos versus the Seahawks. Oh, come on, that's an obvious Broncos game there.
Broncos are definitely going to win that.
All right, well, that has been our picks for this season, for this week's first week. And next week, we'll definitely make the formula better and faster because this did go a little bit slow.
It did. Very slow.
But for the final punishment, which will be at the end of the year and will be separate from the Super Bowl, is we're still thinking of it, but what we're leaning on is we're going to have to take a shot of 96% alcohol spirits, vodka spirits to be precise. I think it's 192 proof. 192 proof.
It's some pretty serious stuff. But
the other one would be a Carolina Reaper, and we're still thinking of some other ones, so the punishment for the loser is still up for debate. If you guys have an idea, just DM us at the Waterboy
for the winner
pod, or a prize for the winner. Let's be honest, we're too cheap to get prizes, but we're not too cheap to punish each other. Anyway, is that all with the NFL?
That's all I have for the NFL.
Thank God, because we're running long and it's midnight.
We are running long.
All right, are you ready for nondescript motorsport news in Formula One?
Yes, mostly because this means I get to lay back and relax and listen to you ramble about whatever it is you're talking about.
Great, and you get to relax while I get to read notes.
Exactly.
Great. All right, let's start with this. Formula One. By the way, we're going to get to the nondescript motorsports a little bit later. After a month of speculation, the Contract Recognition Board on Friday announced that, drum roll please, Oscar Piastri will race with McLaren next year, and Alpine are bloody morons.
Wow.
Yeah, not surprising. Since fall of last year, Piastri's manager, former Formula One driver Mark Webber, has been trying to get Alpine to sign Oscar Piastri to a contract, but due to a lack of legal resources, his contract was, quote, bottleneck. Days before the season opener in Bahrain, Alpine hadn't had a reserve driver and sent Piastri a term sheet of November 2021. It's essentially an extension from last year as a, quote, legal binding contract, end quote, to have him serve as a reserve driver. This contract only allowed him to be an Alpine reserve driver until December 31st of this year. On March 19th, the day before the Bahrain Grand Prix, Alpine sent Piastri a proposal titled Oscar Piastri 2023/2026 proposal, which proposed him to be driving in Williams in 2023 and 2024, and in 2025 to have a seat in Alpine. He would also have had a break clause that could have been activated by July of 2023 in case Alpine wanted to remove him from Williams. Piastri and his team felt that it was an outrage for him to wait even longer to race for Alpine, so they began to explore their options. And on the 4th of July, Oscar Piastri came to an agreement with McLaren and signed on that day. He would officially become a McLaren driver starting on January 1st of next year. Piastri had even told the teams that he had signed with McLaren prior to their announcement, yet they still went ahead with it. The CRB also announced that Alpine was responsible to pay for all of Piastri and McLaren's legal costs, which is expected to be over $500,000, not counting Alpine's own legal costs.
So let me get this straight. He's replacing Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes.
Okay. Sweet.
And Alpine didn't have a legal contract. Literally, their only legal contract was for him to be a reserve driver for 2021. It did not include anything about being full-time with McLaren as the driver. And Alpine. And Alpine said, no, you are committed to us because you have a contract that says you will be driving for us next year as a driver. Nope, that's just a reserve driver. Now, an interesting thing to note is the date of when McLaren signed Piastri. because on July 13th, Daniel Ricciardo posted this online. Quote, "I am committed to McLaren until the end of next year and am not walking away from the sport." End quote. It wouldn't be until all this drama unraveled itself at the end of the month that Daniel Ricciardo found out that McLaren had gone behind his back and signed Piastri without informing him of his firing. So essentially, when Daniel said that, he was unaware that Piastri was already signed to McLaren, and McLaren didn't even tell him, "Hey, you're out this year."
So he didn't know he was going to be done?
Nope. The moment he learned that Piastri was going to McLaren and that he was out was the moment that the entire world learned about this.
What the heck?
Yeah, talk about a stab in the back. Ugh.
Both of these teams, Alpine and McLaren, the legal side and, you know, how they handle this business stuff, it's messed up.
It is, but
I mean,
for Alpine, it is completely messed up.
Even worse.
Yeah, exactly. For McLaren, the thing is, they did everything perfectly legal. The thing is, Daniel knew his seat was make it or break it that year, and he was failing miserably. He's still failing miserably, and I don't know how he expected to be driving for McLaren next year.
No.
When he hadn't shown a result at all this year. And the thing is, last year he did win a race in Italy, the first McLaren win in over a decade, but that was with the old car designs. With these new car designs, he could not adapt to them. So McLaren only had one option, to fire him. Now, I don't agree with the way they did it, but they fired him.
You got to get rid of him. He's ultimately dragging that team down.
He is, quite literally. Anyway, another news. Former Formula One champion Jacques Villeneuve is set to drive last year's Alpine Formula One car 3 days after the race in Monza as part of the celebration for winning the World Championship back in 1997 in a Renault-powered Williams. Now that's a sentence you don't expect to hear.
Huh.
A Williams in a World Championship.
You'll probably never hear that again, ever.
Probably not. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has said that Mercedes is still debating on whether to continue using this year's car concept or scrap it and start anew next year. Now, the reason why they're doing that is because Mercedes has gone with something completely different. Instead of going for big side pods or medium side pods, they went with a concept that is being called no side pods. And it's a very slim Mercedes. And a lot of people are saying that's the reason why they can't get that car right. And I think it has to do mostly with Mercedes' own principle of designing a car where it's low to the ground and it's just causing the porpoising, while, you know, Red Bull is willing to have the car a little bit higher and Mercedes won't. But yeah, that's something.
So they want to make a slimmer car.
Well, they have a slimmer car. They're just thinking about whether they should continue evolving this concept or literally start new with a brand new design, side pod designs and all that. And that could be something that will keep them fighting for podiums and maybe a win.
But it also costs a lot of money.
It also costs a lot of money, and they've spent a lot of money this year upgrading this year's car. And the thing is, if they do upgrade, like if they do redesign the concept for the car, who's to say they won't take 4 steps back?
Right.
So they really got to think about it. And, you know, in the next few races, we might find out. But anyway, that's enough Formula One news. We are going to IndyCar because it's actually quite interesting. Forgive me for mispronouncing this name, but Scott McLaughlin, took pole position in IndyCar racing this past Saturday and was able to achieve a race win. Scott Dixon made an impressive recovery from P16 all the way up to 3rd place. Next week's race will be interesting as it will be the season finale and the championship is up for grabs. Currently, Will Power sits at the top of the standings with a 20-point lead over runner-ups Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon. So, if you're an IndyCar fan, look forward to next week. It's going to be quite good. And now moving on to the Dutch Grand Prix, and fuck, I couldn't move any faster, I mean.
Neither could Charles Leclerc.
I agree. During practice, pigeons were in trouble for many drivers as they wouldn't leave turn 7. And actually, this is a little bit sad and morbid. One of the F3 cars actually had a pigeon impaled on top of the car.
Well, I guess you could say this race was a little pigeonholed.
Oh, God. Lack of sleep is really affecting you. Anyway, during qualifying, our boy Mick Schumacher got P8, a surprising Q3 appearance, and Kevin Magnussen was actually taken out in Q1. So I think he was like 15 or 16. Anyway, Max Verstappen barely beat out Charles Leclerc for pole position. Mercedes was very quick this weekend, and they believe that Lewis could have beaten Verstappen and Leclerc for pole position if Checo hadn't spun out in the last corner, causing the session to end abruptly. Now, during qualifying, there was also a little bit of fan interference as somebody threw a live flare like the orange one Max gets during qualifying, causing the session to be red flag. And pretty much everybody hated that guy. And actually, from what I've heard, fans at the stands realized who it was, make sure he doesn't get away. And there have been reports that he may or may not have gotten beaten up by the crowd.
I did see a video. I saw a video of a guy standing right there next to him when he threw the flare. And he's sitting there like smiling. He's got this dumb look on his face. But everybody in the crowd is like, "What are you doing, dude? Why did you do that?" You know, it was weird because he's standing there staring at the flare, like not moving at all, just standing there on the steps. And everybody else is like, "What the heck?" But it was weird, but he should not have thrown that at all.
No, and actually during the Dutch Grand Prix, when people entered the track, it said, "Do not use a flare. Flares are banned, and please hand them to security at the gate. And if you are caught with a flare, you will be thrown out." And from what I've heard, there was a few flares during qualifying during practice. We don't know if those people got kicked out, but we definitely know that guy got kicked out because
he did.
They waited for security to come by and grab him, and then he got kicked out and is possibly banned for life from attending the Zandvoort Grand Prix.
Hopefully.
Oh, by the way, if I forgot to say it, the Dutch Grand Prix, the Netherlands, this is Max's home race, so hometown boy.
The flares are for Max.
Yes, not for McLaren. I'm sorry, McLaren. Anyway. Let's start with the actual race review. It wasn't that interesting of a race. Not the entire race, but certain parts. So let's start. The race starts and Verstappen gets ahead of Leclerc, and Hamilton and Carlos Sainz make slight contact during turn 1. Kevin Magnussen goes wide and into the gravel and hits the barrier at turn 2. He doesn't seem to have severe damage and limps on for the rest of the race. He could not get that car to work. I think there was some suspension damage, some internal damage, because that Haas struggled, and Haas cars usually struggle, but this time he really struggled. Anyway, on lap 15, Ferrari paid tribute to a classic moment in Formula One history, where at the Nürburgring in 1999, Eddie Irvine came in for a pit stop, and Ferrari wasn't ready for him. The team put on 3 of his tires and had to wait a ludicrous amount of time to get the 4th tire out, and then they were having a committee meeting about whose fault it was, all the while the announcers were yelling at them to stick it on and let him go. And now, 23 years later, they did the same thing with Carlos Sainz, and to add insult to injury, rival Checo Perez got out of his pit stop box, and one of the Ferrari mechanics left his wheel gun too far out, and when Checo left the pit box, he had no room to move and ran over the wheel gun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. All in all, this cost Carlos' position. Ferrari was left to relive one of their biggest blunders, and the only good thing to say was there was no committee meeting this time around. Ferrari is the team that keeps on giving.
They have moment after moment where you look at them and they're just like, what the heck?
Oh, and trust me, this is not the only blunder with Sainz.
Oh man.
During this tribute moment, Sebastian Vettel and Mick Schumacher were having quite the fight at turn 11, with the 4-time world champion not leaving his protege much room on the inside. By lap 19th, Max pitted for mediums, and Hamilton led the race, followed by his teammate George Russell in P2. On lap 28, Max passed George on the straight, and though the Red Bull was quite a bit further back, the immense straight-line speed of the Red Bull helped get Max past Russell rather easily. Now, something to note is, we've been talking about this the entire season, the Red Bull has been incredibly fast, ridiculously fast in the straight, and for a while, that's the only thing that kept them from the further away from the Ferraris. But for this race, it just wasn't Max's race. I mean, he won the race, spoiler, but it wasn't like in Belgium where Max was just on a rocket ship. This time around, he actually had to fight for it. And Mercedes, for some reason, they were just fucking quick as hell. On lap 36, Hamilton tries to pass Checo for P3, but as they go into the first corner, Perez locks up and forces Hamilton wide, showing once again why he's El Maestro of defense. Next lap around, they're both going at it this time. Hamilton gets ahead of Perez, but Hamilton comes right behind Vettel, who just came out of the pit lane, making Lewis slower, but unfortunately, El Maestro couldn't capitalize on the sitting duck of Hamilton. So, in one moment, we saw Checo being Checo and being brilliant at defense, and then we saw Checo not being as great as Max Verstappen when it comes to fighting neck and neck or catching up with somebody.
It was shades of last year.
Yes. 2 laps later, Checo is passed by Russell, and it looks like the magic that Checo had is gone. Now, here's an interesting one. On lap 44, Yuki Tsunoda stops at the side of the track, citing that the tires weren't fitted in properly. He begins to unbuckle when he's told the tires are fitted right on their monitors, on team's monitors, and to take the car to the pits. Yuki makes his way around the track carefully and slow and pits. They change his tire and tighten his seatbelt and let him off on his way. But almost immediately, he gets on the radio to tell the team that he still has the same problem and he's told to pull over. Unfortunately, he can't pull over in the pit lane exit because if there's an emergency, the safety car nor the medical car can get out of the way, so he has to find a way to stop the car. Now, due to Zandvoort being next to the beach, there's a lot of sand, and the marshals need help moving the car as they can't do it by brute force. This leads to a virtual safety car coming out, and Max gets a cheap pit stop and switches to hard tires as his tires were dying, and Hamilton was on the hard tires, giving the Briton an advantage over Max at this point. This led to a lot of idiots on the internet saying that this is all a conspiracy of Red Bull having AlphaTauri do this to secure a victory for Max and a victory for Red Bull. But here's the thing. Why would Red Bull risk getting disqualified from the Constructor Championship, which means a lot of money, having Max be disqualified from the Drivers' Championship, which means prestige, all because they wanted to win a race in Zandvoort, which they didn't need to win because they're so far up ahead in the Drivers' Championship and then the Constructors' Championship that it really didn't matter if they won or not. So that is just one of the stupid things that Hamilton fans say. But anyway, both Mercedes also take advantage and change from hards to medium. On lap 55, Bottas stops at the main straight right before the first corner as his engine died. Again, another Ferrari engine dies. This leads to a safety car, and because whoever controls the signals took so long to get the safety car signal out there that Carlos Sainz thought he was still racing and passed Esteban Ocon on a yellow flag, which you're not supposed to. Yeah, Carlos is not having a good day. This safety car leads to Max to box for soft tires, and Hamilton takes the lead with George being behind him. Now, George makes a call to box for softs, as he'll be left too vulnerable for Verstappen and possibly Leclerc. Mercedes agrees to pit, and Hamilton is left out on his own with Max Verstappen on fresh tires. Fresh, soft tires. Cue Abu Dhabi flashbacks from last year where Hamilton lost the championship to Verstappen in a similar way. Yeah, so Hamilton wasn't happy. He was cussing a lot, to be fair, and he
has PTSD.
He had PTSD. And something a lot of people were saying is that George knew that if he pitted for softs, he could keep his position of P2, because if he stayed and helped defend from Max, he knew he wouldn't be able to keep Max behind him. It was only a matter of time, and Lewis was going to get overtaken regardless, and that would have left Russell with a P3 finish and Hamilton with P2. So people were saying that Russell, because he called this, it wasn't the team, but Russell called for the softs, they said yes, and he did it to keep P2 while Hamilton suffered and didn't even get a podium.
He fell back far.
Because everybody in the top 5 had soft tires except Hamilton.
I mean, do you think George Russell would do that? To kind of nudge, saying, well, Hamilton's not as good as he used to be. I finished up here, Hamilton finished down there.
Maybe. I mean, at the same time, I think he wasn't thinking about Hamilton. He was simply thinking, if I pit, I can keep P2. So anyway, that happens. Now, going back to Carlos. During this time, Carlos pits and gets an unsafe release for almost causing Fernando Alonso to crash into the back of the Ferrari. For this, Sainz was given a 5-second penalty, and team principal Mattia Binotto, who is the biggest clown in Ferrari, according to a lot of people, thought the penalty was too harsh because it ended up costing Carlos a few positions. Even though everybody knows what happens when you do an unsafe release, and everybody gets the same penalty regardless of where they are in the grid. So, Ferrari being a clown again. Yay, Ferrari.
Ferrari being Ferrari.
Yep. Safety car comes in at the end of lap 60, and just like in Abu Dhabi, Verstappen just plows past Hamilton right at the start of the lap with no lube.
With no lube.
Well, I mean, if you saw the pass, you knew he just breezed past him. Anyway, on lap 63, Russell passes Hamilton, but he almost hits the back of Lewis Hamilton's car. So good job for George for those quick reflexes. Hamilton gets on the radio and says, quote, "I cannot believe you guys fucking screwed me. I can't tell you how pissed I am," end quote. And as the race continues, he is passed by Leclerc. And didn't he get on Alonso last week because Alonso called him an idiot?
Yeah.
And he refuses to apologize to Alonso for a mistake he did.
So he thinks Mercedes screwed him?
Basically, yeah, because this was a blunder that a lot of people were saying, what were you thinking, Mercedes? The issue is Max would have won regardless. Hamilton is good, but Max is better. His car is better. Even though this Mercedes was fast on this track, that Red Bull was going to win. Because throughout the entire race, I'll be honest with you, Leclerc wasn't even a thought on Max's head. It was all Mercedes. And for me, I think Ferrari's out of this championship fight. They're fighting
They're fighting for second place. And even then.
Exactly. And the only person that Leclerc is fighting for the driver's standing is Checo, which after this race, they're both tied at 102 points. Not at 102 points. I think 202 points. Maybe 300? I can't remember. Anyway, on lap 72, Max Verstappen takes his second home Grand Prix win, with Russell coming behind him in second and Leclerc in third. And that was the Dutch Grand Prix. What did you think?
Interesting race. Good to see Max Verstappen getting a home game win. And Ferrari's woes continue, and George Russell impresses.
Yep. And that's all we're going to say because it is 1 a.m. and we're both fucking tired, and you got a job interview tomorrow. He's going to be a jizz cleaner at a porn place. So good job, Davis. You're moving up in the world. Anyway, sign us off, white boy. God damn it, Davis, wake up!
Patrick Mahomes.
Damn it, Davis, I said wake up, boy.
Okay. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Waterboy Experience. We hope you enjoyed it. Catch us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and wherever you may find us. Share us with your friends. Thank you all. Have a good night.
And peace.
And peace.
Second and goal just outside the 10. Hart tips it in and it's Ward. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offense taking over